Attitude check. Bronco Pike.
Hello and welcome to this edition of the Broncos on Blast Sports Report. I'm Alex Podlegar and we're coming to you from the campus of Fayetteville State University, where some may think it's actually the off-season for the football program. But with our next guest, you'll see that it's never off-season for football at Fayetteville State. I'd like to welcome in our guest recruiting coordinator, David Bowser. Appreciate you dropping by today.
Thank you, sir.
And first off, Coach, that's where I want to kind of jump off with things. It's never off-season for you, is it? You're always working.
No, it's not. Basically, we are all staff members have divided up areas, mainly throughout the state of North Carolina, and what we have to do is we're constantly on the phone, contacting high school coaches, trying to get names of potential student athletes, and during the season, we'll invite some to come to football games, and we'll have them come visit campus, and then when we come back from Christmas in January, we're full tilt. Ever since we've been back on campus on Monday, we've already had kids visiting campus, coming in for officials and unofficial type visits, because you want to give them an opportunity to get on campus. So when people think right now we've basically shut down, we're at the most intense part, because I tell everybody it's amazing what you do for 9 months as far as recruiting goes to be able to get 10, hopefully 15 football games in. But that's an amazing thing that we have to go through for that 9 months before we get to the season.
Can you give me a sense of what this time of year is like for someone like you, for the staff? I mean, you mentioned it. January is a very intense time. Signing day is right around the corner in early February. Can you give me a sense, put into words, what this time of year is like?
Well, it gets to the situation where you come out of Christmas break and you're a month away from signing day. So now what you're looking at doing is you've got to evaluate between 150, maybe 200 kids who are also being recruited by other schools, and then you're trying to set up to get them to come in for visits to see campus and meet with the coaching staff. And then in the meantime, you're trying to decide who you're going to offer, who you think would be a kid that you want to monitor in case a bigger school, they may fall off on signing day. So right now we're in phase one of really trying to get the guys that we're focusing in on, that we want to get on campus, and for that initial signing day on February the 2nd, we want to get those guys to be a part of the program. Then from there, we've been keeping eyes on kids who may have thought they were Division I, 1AA prospects that may not really do too much with us right now, but then after signing day, when they find out they may not be going to the school that they thought they were going to, now we start that next wave of getting on those guys as well. So we kind of have like two lists. We got the kids that we know about, who we have a legitimate shot at, so we're working those guys hard right now, and then we have guys that we know who are on the bubble at a higher level, and we keep in touch with them, and we track them. We keep in touch with either them or their coaches, and they're giving us constant feedback, and then we'll go into that second wave of recruiting. But the nucleus right now is we're mainly looking for kids who genuinely want to be at Fayetteville State, who have an understanding of what our program is and the standard that Coach Phillips has set as the head coach over the last 12 years, and those are the guys that we focus on initially, and that's the best crop that you can find, but there's going to be some good ones that we will find later on. But those guys right here are usually those ones that come in and redshirt a year and then eventually develop and evolve into good players for us. Examples like Richard Medlin, the Dylan Kessners, those guys are 5-year guys in the program that we just lost. So we're looking for guys that will come in here and make that kind of commitment and eventually leave as all CIAA type players for us and 4-year starters, maybe 3-year starters in the program. So those are good examples of guys that we sign initially and we watch them progress.
Let's look at the football program now. Talk about the 2010 season. It was a young program this year, really, but a lot of progress made throughout the season. As a coach, your thoughts on the 2010 season, how it ended up for the Broncos?
Well, winning 4 of your last 5 games is positive for the guys that have gone home for the break. The success at the end, when you're talking about the number of freshmen and sophomores and redshirt freshmen that played this year, they did an outstanding job of getting better every week and not getting discouraged when we started out early, struggling a little bit. And that's the one great thing about when you're dealing with working for somebody like Coach Phillips is nothing changes. He's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. He stays consistent. Practices stayed the same. We kept working the kids hard. We kept being positive. We kept being upbeat. And so when the tide began to turn and those guys could see us getting better, we go and come back from a deficit against St. Aug, and people say, well, you lost the game. Yeah, but those kids gain confidence because they began to see that if they take away some of their mistakes, they can play with people. And, we brag about the fact we beat the two teams over in the Northern Division that finished first and second. We beat Bowie. We beat Virginia State. We lose to Shaw, who was the conference champion, by 7. And a lot of people thought that game was going to be a rout but the kids were believing, and then we finished the backside winning 4 out of 5. So there were so many positives. Now what we've got to go out and do is find some offensive linemen that can help us out to replace the guy we lost. We need to find some guys that can run the football to replace Richard Medlin. We got to be able to find some guys that can catch the ball and be big-time receivers. And then on the defensive side, replacing Jeremy Cunningham is going to be hard, but you got to hope that you can go out there and find a young man that can bring the same level of intensity for the guy that led the conference in tackles this past year. And then up front, we want to add to that. We got some young guys on the defensive front, so it's not an immediate need, but we want to bring some more in there to help us out along the way to develop. And in the secondary, we've got to replace John Hicks, who, if anybody in a 5-year span evolved as a football player, it was John Hicks. And it's going to be a situation where you got to find somebody who wants to be here. That's the most important thing, because a guy that wants to be here like Richard Medlin and Dylan Kessner, John Hicks and Jeremy Henry, they come every day with their hard hat, not only just for game day but for practice, and you could see them getting better. So that's what we mainly are looking for. And when you assess the 2010 season, there was positives on the tail end. You'd want to win a championship every year, but when you see your team getting better towards the end of the year, that's something to build on going into the next season and into the spring. So that's what we're excited about with that.
You mentioned some quality names from the Broncos program the last few years: Richard Medlin, Dylan Kessner, Jeremy Cunningham, all these guys. Talk about some of those specific areas that need to be addressed for the Broncos going forward and how you address those needs.
Well, you got to look at the fact that Dylan Kessner was starting center for 4 years and did an outstanding job playing center for us. Richard Medlin starting tailback for 4 years. He missed some games and had to split some time as a junior, but came back as a senior and did an outstanding job. So what we're going to do is we'll look maybe on the junior college ranks to see if we can find somebody to initially replace those guys. But when it's all said and done, when you think about it, those guys were program guys. They were with us for 4 or 5 years. So if you can find quality young men just like those guys were, then you're able to watch the program develop again. And we're going to basically meet those needs on offense from that perspective, that we get us a house back in here. And when we say a house back, you want a guy that can go 90 yards. If he touched that ball one time, he could go yard. You'd love to have one of those. And on the offensive line, we need a center who is comfortable enough that he can make the calls up front and build on what Coach Lowry is teaching him every week and get the offense executed and point out to certain people that need to be blocked and make the calls. So you want somebody who has a sharp understanding up front of what they've got to do. And with the receiving core, we've got some good young ones coming back, as you know, but we need a guy that can be a home run hitter. You definitely want to be able to get that, because we're getting to the point where if you're going to compete in this league, every now and then you need that guy that can change a game fast. And we feel like those are the things we're out there looking for right now.
Talk about, you brought up junior college ranks. Fayetteville State's a tremendous opportunity for somebody coming from a junior college. How does that work into the recruiting here at Fayetteville State?
Well, we usually recruit junior college kids earlier. We're looking at those guys back in the early fall. August, we're finding out the names of kids that are available. Our first focus is looking for North Carolina kids that may have had to go junior college route, because a lot of those kids we were already probably recruiting, but they may not have been able to get in school at the time. So we work that angle. Now, Coach Westbrooks, who's our wide receiver coach, who is also a product of the junior college system that came to Fayetteville State and had a great career with us, he does an outstanding job of going out to Arizona and being able to pick up every now and then a kid that is from Arizona that can relate to him, and tells him how to get through the fact of, guys think, well, that's so far away from home and things like that. But the amazing thing is once we get them here and they get on campus, they fall in love with the place, and then a lot of them, they don't want to leave after they graduate. They'd like to be able to stay in the Fayetteville area, because Coach Westbrooks went back to Arizona for a couple of years, but the first opportunity he had to come back, he was glad to get back here. And I think that's the thing that I love when we sell this in recruiting, is we just tell people, you get on campus, you'll fall in love with the place, you'll love the atmosphere, the people are good people here, and you can't beat that. And they do. They get an attachment for being at Fayetteville State. And I think that if we can take the junior college kids that we get get them here, because a lot of people think, well, why would you go out of state and get these kids? Sometimes your needs in recruiting have got to be met out of state. I mean, it's just because of numbers. Because some kids you may be trying to get in state, they want to get away from home, or they may have relatives that are in another part of the country, so it doesn't make sense to you why a kid would leave the state. But usually there's a good reason if guys leave the state, and so we got to go out of state and try to convince some kids that they want to come here and make this their home as well.
You know, we've talked about what kind of football players you're looking for. You mentioned the people at Fayetteville State, good people at Fayetteville State. So what kind of people, what kind of kid, I guess, are you looking for in a prospective student athlete to come here? What kind of person?
Well, you're always looking for a kid that has a humble spirit, that they understand that if they come in and listen to the coaches, they're going to develop and get better. And in the same token, you're looking for kids that when you ask the coaches, you know, well, what kind of kid is he in the weight room? What kind of kid is he in the classroom? You want to know, because there's a lot of opportunities now where you want to make sure that young man comes into your program and is going to be a positive shining light. And so in doing that, we encourage the coaches to let us know. And when we talk to them in the recruiting process, it's always good to deal with schools that you're familiar with, because the coaches know they've got a vested interest and you've gotten kids from them before. So we usually deal with those schools first because you have a relationship. And they'll tell you, well, Coach, that's one you definitely would want to talk to. Or they may say, well, Coach, you know, he's a good kid. He can be a knucklehead at times, which all that's fine because they're kids. That's the you know, in 3 or 4 years, you can see them evolve and they become men in the process of developing. They already all, when they come, think they're men, but when you start seeing the amount of responsibility that comes with being a student and being on your own and going to class, you can weed them out on those who need to develop. So we look for guys that are going to be good, solid guys here in the program.
Finally, I'll get you out on this because I know you're busy. You got work to do. It's that time of year. But you've touched on it a little bit. What can Fayetteville State now offer that prospective student athlete? Kind of give us your pitch a little bit to where you're talking to some of these kids around the state and beyond. You know, what can you sell the school on?
Well, I tell them all the time that when you get here, once again, it's just you talk to kids that have never been to Fayetteville and they've never been on campus, and the perception, or I say misconception they have, and then they step on the campus and they see the beautiful facilities, not just the athletic facilities, but the state-of-the-art classrooms, the great MBA program we have, the strong criminal justice program that we have here, the business side. I mean, just go on. And when they get here and they see that, it's amazing. Then they turn around and they see our stadium, and they see our scoreboard, they see our basketball arena, they see the swimming pool, they see the facilities that they get to use day in and day out as student athletes, and they're very impressed. And that's the key, because at this point, it used to be you could recruit a kid and they would have allegiance to certain universities and stuff. Now, today's student athlete, it tends to be sometimes they want to see something that they can take back and show their friends. You know, it's amazing. I was kidding with somebody just a little while ago about how the cell phones have changed, where they can take pictures instantly and show everybody what they saw and what the product they liked. And when we were going along, you had to look at it, hope you could remember it and be able to go back and describe it, or you took pictures with Polaroids and things like that. So now you're in a situation where they want to be able to have something tangible that they can take back and show their friends when they're going through this process. And I think our facilities are some of the best in the country as far as Division II football goes.
Good deal. Well, Coach, like I said, I know you're busy. I know you need to get out there and do some work. I appreciate you dropping by today, spending a few minutes with us to talk about what you do and what it takes to be a student athlete here at Fayetteville State. So I appreciate that very much. So thank you for watching Broncos on Blast. As always, you can follow all of Fayetteville State athletics at fsubroncos.com. You can follow us on Facebook as well, and follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/FSU Broncos. I'm Alex Podlegar. You've been watching Broncos on Blast.